Good afternoon to my lecturer and my fellow friends. My name is Chung Hyun and my matter number is 274009. I'm from semester 4 BPM. So today I want to present the chapter 7, which is monitoring in the subject environmental management in tourism. So first of all, I will present the definition of the monitoring. So the monitoring is the systematic gathering and analysis of data over time. And according to the Griffin et al., the monitoring for the effective management of a protected area that requires the systematic gathering, analysis, and integration into management systems of data relating to both the natural environment and visitor over time. So but for on the other hand, for the natural area tourism, a comprehensive monitoring program will collect data on the natural environment and its visitor. The information on the natural environment could include the vegetation cover, damage to vegetation, weed invasion, soil properties, and water quality and wildlife pollutions, for example, the change in breeding success or distribution. So such the data can be used to identify and quantify the site-specific impacts. So here are the 8 reasons for monitoring environment. So the first reason for the monitoring is management of natural areas. Managing the impacts of visitor use is essential if the natural environment is to protect and visitor experience maintained. The monitoring also provide information not only on when the management intervention is required, but it also can improve the manager's understanding of the cause and effect relationship between the levels and the types of the visitor use and the resultant. The such understanding is essential if used to be managed to prevent the further impacts or in many cases to reduce the uh, existing levels of impact. Uh, Additionally, if an impact can be detected early, it is probably cheaper and easier to remedy before it reaches a threshold of irreversible change. So the second reason for the monitoring is planning, because the monitoring provides the information needed for management plans, recreation, or tourism planning and site design activities. The essential data for the planning include visitor numbers and characteristics, activities, resource impacts, patterns of use, satisfactions, and expectation. So this data can be provided by a one-off inventorying exercise or preferably from an ongoing monitoring program. The monitoring also allows the success of these plans to determine as well as indicating when revision is needed and accepting in the revision process. So the third reason for monitoring is resource allocation, because the monitoring provides the managers with a systematic basic for allocating the funds and resource. By using the reliable data enables the resource to be allocated where they are most needed, for example to a site where the damage to vegetation or overcrowding needs management attention rather than to a less affect site that a manager intuitive believe the needs attention. The such strategy allocation of resource can improve the economic efficiency of the natural area management. The environmental impact and visitor monitoring data also have a crucial role to play at the corporate level in helping land management organizations to seek the funding from government or other source. The senior agency staff may use the total visitor numbers and visitor certification or total areas impact. For example, the kilometer of a tail impact by a horse to justify requests for the financial support. So the another reason for monitoring is public accountability, because the monitoring provides the information to the corporate levels of land management agency to assist with the accountability and transparency. Increasingly, the activities of the natural area manager and their organization are being subject to the public scrutiny, and the performance reporting where the monitoring data are made publicly available is one way of the meeting public requests for accountability. For example, in Australia, the organizations such as the Western Australian Department of Environment and Conservation they will report annually to the site government on their performance. The monitoring also can enhance the visitor's experience. Many protected areas have a dual mandate of protecting the natural environment and providing the nature-based recreation experience for the visitors. There is a growing interest in ensuring these experiences are high quality and as a part of best practice, but also to foster the royal visitor who will behave well in protected areas, visit again, recommend such areas to others, and be echo advocate for these areas in the wider world. The monitoring also can provide information on the types of experience visitors are seeking and obtaining, their levels of satisfaction with their visit, and what contributes to or distract from quality experience for them. And it also can provide the information on their loyalty. For example, whether they would recommend the area to others, and the resulting information can help the managers to create a new experience or modify existing ones and manage the contributing factors. Then the sixth reason for monitoring is marketing and interpretation. The monitoring provides the information needed to the successfully market and interpret the nature areas. Understanding who visitors are and what they want is the fundamental to successfully marketing a nature area. And increasingly, the managers are trying to meet the needs of specific user groups, each with their own particular information and interpretation requirements. Such an approach that requires information on the motivations and the characteristics of different segments of the user population. The seventh reason for monitoring is legislative and legal requirements. For many land managers, the legislation guiding their operation requires that the visitor experience are to be provided, but only to the extent that the natural environment is unimpaired. For example, the U.S. National Park Service is guided by the National Park Service Organic Act of 1960. The monitoring shows when impairment has occurred and is therefore needed to meet this legislative mandate. The management policy and guidelines may also expre- explicitly require the visitor impact monitoring. According to Marion, in several places in U.S. National Park Service management policy, the monitoring of resource impact is prescribed. And the last reason for monitoring is obtaining information to include in simulation to assist and improve the decision making. The simulation where the data are strategically collected and then used in models to simulate the visitor behavior more broadly in an area. It can provide a cost-effective means of describing where the visitor go and what they do. Most of these simulation require the information of visitor numbers and their patterns of use. To test proposed management change, such as the constructing new campgrounds or new estate or extend access route simulation using autonomous agents, also known as individual-based models, can be undertaken. Uh, the RB-Sim, which is the Recreation Behavior Simulator, is an example of this type of simulation. So, in this chapter, also will describe the principle for monitoring. So, the following principles uh, are guide the development of a monitoring program for a natural area tourism. The first principle for monitoring is clear objectives are integral to the success of a program. The objective will depend on the reason for monitoring. The monitoring should never be an end in itself. The reason range from managing the impacts of visitor use through to the legal requirements accompanying approval of tourism developments. The objective must be clearly identified before commencing the activities. Otherwise, important information may not be collected, and the time and money could be wasted on collecting unnecessary data. The value of data is greatest when monitoring objectives are explicit and clear at the outset and remain the focus throughout the data collection. The second principle for monitoring is a well-planned and managed information storage and retrieval system is essential. The monitoring requires a comparison of repeat measure of the same parameters. As such, the data needs to be stored where they are safe but accessible, so that the new data can be compared with the old data. It is also desirable that the form of storage allows the simple manipulations and analysis, so that the comparison between the data collected at different times can be uh, readily made. Such information system need not be grandiose and expensive, as long as they are based on a systematic, standardized process for data collection and entry, a structured computer-based storage system, and clear instruction and simple procedures for entering, many manipulating and retrieving information. The third principle for monitoring is a sampling strategy. Providing a cost-effective robust data is crucial. The careful consideration of where and how much the data are collected is crucial to the success of a monitoring program. This must take place during the design phase. The environmental impact might be monitored by sensor with all sites survive or by sampling only a subset of site. With the sampling a subset, the site must be selected in such a way that the results are generalizable to all the site and measurements can be repeated over time. For tails, for example, if a description of the condition of the whole tail is the objective, then either the whole tail can be censored or a subset of randomly located points can be sampled and the result generalized to the whole tail. Ideally, the environmental monitoring associated with the natural area tourism would involve the measurements before and after a development takes place, as well as record from the impact site and similar nearby the undisputed control site. Then the fourth principle for monitoring is the quality assurance is critical to the success of a programmer. The quality assurance is a key element of any monitoring program. It is achieved by the training staff involved in the data collection, entry and analysis, calibration and regular checking of counting this device, for example, the traffic counters, and uh, the regular feedback to staff and regular reviews of performance. The performance reviews can include the regular check of how surveys are conducted, complete data sets or visitor questionnaires, overall system performance, the information needs, and objective and priorities of the whole monitoring program. The quantity is also improved by providing the standardized means for conducting monitoring and recording the data obtained. And the last principle for the monitoring is the skill manager must lead and take responsibility for designing and implementing monitoring programs for their natural areas. The responsibility for monitoring generally rests with managers as a part of their suite of management responsibilities. To help the managers cope with the limited resource, the seasonal staff or students may be contract as long as they are adequately trained and supervised. The rules for scientists could include the assistance in designing a monitoring program, including the use of new technologies or analytical techniques and periodic reviews to ensure that the quality of the data is being maintained and programmers are scientifically defensible. The scientists may also have the ongoing research interest that could form a part of such a program. Any the new monitoring programmer should build on what already exists. The another subtopic in this chapter is monitoring visitor impacts. The aim of the monitoring programmers is to detect change, hopefully before the long term or an irreversible change in the condition of the ecosystem have occurred. The fulfillment of this aim requires a measure of sensitive indicators at appropriate temporal and spatial scales, yet a monitoring programmer does not necessarily need to demonstrate a causal or causal relationship between a given disturbance and the indicators being measured. To this end, the approach that taken to develop a monitoring program should be different to that required to design a recreation ecology research project. In simple terms, the visitor impact research establish a crucial relationship between an activity and environmental indicators, whilst the monitoring can often presume causality and focus on reporting change in indicators. The standards and indicators are often spoken of in relation to one another, but also they need to be understood on their own in order to be useful. The indicators are the quantitative and or qualitative parameters or measures that determine the over time performance of functions, process, and outcomes. In other words, the indicators are measures of progress. In order for an indicator to be useful, it must be calculated in the same way every time. This is important so that the statistics are comparable across the different place and in the same place over the different times. The reason for pairing the standards with indicators is the an indicator is the measure itself, while a standard defines the points of for that particular measure which must be reached or maintained. The standards are useful because they provide an indication of where programming is falling short of reaching operation goals, and they quantify this shortfall. In this section of on indicators and standards is underpinned by the interest in understanding visitor experience and managing to enhance them. Measuring experience has remained an elusive task, although it is assisted by the basic tenet of outdoor recreation management that the quality of visitor experience depends on the condition of the setting. Although the manager can control the setting, for example, the environmental, social, and managerial condition at a site, enhance the nature and quality of visitor experience. However, by managing the setting, the manager are increasing in probability that positive experience are released by the visitors. As such, the following information on questionnaire content as basic for monitoring and subsequent action by managers that focus on the indicators and standards for the desired condition in nature areas and satisfaction with attributes for this condition. For example, healthful staff or clean facilities. Through the monitoring, the management action can be triggered by standards being exceeded or the visitor not being satisfied by the performance of particular attributes. This section on questionnaires conclude with detail on monitoring visitor future behavior intention. Such intention provide a guide to managers regarding whether the visitor have the satisfactory experience and hence are likely to return or recommend to others the nature area that they have visited. Having a standard is a crucial aspect of managing natural areas for tourism. Without the standards, it is impossible to tell if the impacts have reached unacceptable levels or jeopardizing the values that attract the visitor in the first place. The last subtopic in this chapter is the integrated approach. An integrated approach to monitoring the site-based uh, impacts of natural areas tourism includes attention to the impacts and to the visitor themselves. For example, The integrated approach has been used in wilderness areas in the Cascade Mountains in Washington and Oregon, and in the Warren National Park in Western Australia. The integrated approach are not widespread, but instead either the visitor impact or visitor are the focus of the data collection. The monitoring of the environmental impacts is crucial to understand and make explicit change in the natural environment resulting from the visitor use. The standards are then needed to advise uh, the managers when action are needed to improve the impacts. An integrated approach seems essential if the standards are to be provided for environmental and social conditions of importance to the visitor and the managers. Meaningful, meaningful, the standards and understanding of the desired condition that underpin them that can be obtained by asking the visitors. Such the standards should include recognition of the ecological significance of an impact, especially in relation to the rarity or irreplaceability of the attribute being impact. The visitor monitoring over time provide a success to visitors' perception regardless standards and a ready means of reviewing them as more information becomes available. So, in conclusion, this chapter has a comprehensive uh, review monitoring for natural area tourism, moving from general considerations such as the reason for monitoring and guiding principles. Depending on the objective for resource monitoring and the resource available, either rapid or more time-consuming measurement-based approach can be applied. One of the approach is selecting the indicators and standard in monitoring to nature area by using the questionnaire. The last part of the chapter has described the integrated approach to impact management. An uh, integrate monitoring program for Warren National Park in Western Australia provide as a case study of an integrated approach to monitoring has drawn the chapter to a close. So that's all from me. Thank you for your time to watching my presentation today.